All right, let's dive into a really fascinating puzzle that's happening right now at the heart of modern medicine. You see, there's this absolute explosion of AI tools being created for healthcare, but for some reason, they're just not showing up in hospitals. So today, we're going to figure out why the AI we're building isn't the AI that's actually being used.
Okay, get this. In just 3 years, between 2021 and 2024, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration gave the green light to 611 new AI-enabled medical devices. I mean, that is a massive boom in innovation. It tells you the technology is here, it's ready, and it's passing the sniff test with regulators.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the other side of that coin. In that exact same period, fewer than 3% of hospitals in the U.S. posted a single job that required any kind of AI expertise. So you have hundreds of new tools getting approved, while the very places they're designed for aren't even hiring the people to run them. See the disconnect?
And that right there is the central mystery we're unpacking today. If the innovation is firing on all cylinders, why is the actual implementation stuck in first gear? This is the paradox we're going to get to the bottom of.
You know, this isn't just your typical tech adoption lag. It's a really deep disconnect, something a major European Commission study actually calls the innovation implementation paradox. And we're going to use the data from that very study to figure out what is really going on here.
So our first big clue in this mystery is realizing that the two main groups here, the hospitals on one side and the AI developers on the other, are basically working from two completely different playbooks. They have totally different ideas about what AI should even be doing in a hospital setting.
And this is where you can really see that conflict in black and white. On one hand, you have what hospitals and healthcare providers are practically begging for. And on the other, you have what the brilliant minds in AI are actually spending their time building. And spoiler alert, they just don't match up.
This chart just makes that gap impossible to ignore. When you ask hospital leaders what their #1 priority is, a whopping 83% say workflow efficiency. They need help with the day-to-day chaos. But when you ask developers, their top priority, at 72%, is diagnostic accuracy. They're focused on a totally different, super high-tech problem.
And this massive disconnect leads to what the study calls the administrative AI paradox. And it's a fascinating idea, right? The most desired tool, the thing everyone agrees would be a game changer, is the very thing that's being developed the least. What's really telling is when you talk to the people on the front lines, the doctors and nurses. A huge 71% of them believe that AI tools for administrative stuff, paperwork, scheduling, documentation, that would be the single most transformative thing for their jobs. And if you think that's a big number, check out the hospital leaders. They feel even more strongly about it. A staggering 87% of them point to administrative AI as the biggest opportunity out there. They see how it could free up their staff and just make the entire system work better.
Which, of course, brings us to the most obvious question in the world. If the doctors, the nurses, and the hospital executives are all screaming from the rooftops for tools to help with administrative burnout, why are the developers so busy focusing on diagnostics? What gives?
Well, to solve this puzzle, we've got to look deeper. We need to uncover the forces, the motives, if you want to get dramatic about it, that are actively pulling these two groups apart. Because this isn't just a simple misunderstanding, it's a systematic problem.
The research really zeroes in on three main culprits creating this gap between what the healthcare system needs and what the tech world is building. So let's break them down.
Okay, first up, there's just the cool factor, the intellectual appeal. I mean, let's be real. Building an algorithm that can spot cancer on a CT scan, that's a huge, prestigious, technically fascinating challenge. It's the kind of thing that wins awards. Automating paperwork, as valuable as it just doesn't have that same kind of wow factor for a top-tier AI researcher. Second, and this is a big one, you just have to follow the money. Our healthcare systems have clear, established ways to pay for a diagnostic tool or a clinical procedure. But there's usually no direct way for a hospital to send a bill to an insurance company for making our scheduling 15% more efficient. So naturally, investors and developers chase the money, and the money is in clinical tools.
And third, you've got regulation. Now, this one is a little counterintuitive. You'd think developers would want to avoid the headache of getting regulatory approval. But actually, getting that official FDA or EU clearance is like a giant seal of approval. It's proof that your tool is safe and it works, and that becomes a massive selling point, making that whole difficult process worth it in the end.
So here's the crucial thing to remember. This isn't just some abstract academic problem. This disconnect has serious real-world consequences for patients, for doctors, and for the entire healthcare system's bottom line.
Just look at this number. According to the research, healthcare professionals are spending somewhere between 20 and 60% of their time on administrative tasks, not on patient care. Think about that. That's a huge chunk of their day just eaten up by paperwork that could probably be automated.
And all that wasted time leads to a whole cascade of problems. You get massive inefficiency baked into the system. You risk making healthcare disparities even worse, and you get a direct line to the crisis of physician burnout that we hear so much about. It's a huge deal.
And the crazy part is, we know these administrative tools actually work. Studies show that something as simple as an AI scribe, a tool that just listens to a doctor-patient conversation and writes the notes, can cut down documentation time by up to 24%. That means less pajama time finishing charts at home, which is a major driver of burnout. The solutions are right there.
Okay, so let's get to the final piece of this investigation. How do we actually fix this? How do we finally bridge this gap between the innovators and the hospitals that desperately need their help?
The good news is, the research doesn't just point out the problem. It actually offers a potential solution. It lays out a pretty clear 3-step plan with policy ideas designed to get developers and hospitals rowing in the same direction, focused on the same finish line.
So, what's the plan? First, you've got to reform the financing. You need to create payment models that actually reward hospitals for becoming more efficient. Second, you have to require real-world input. Make it a rule that doctors and nurses, the end users, are part of the design process from day one. And third, expand how we measure success. Don't just ask if a tool is clinically accurate. Ask if it saves time, reduces workflow headaches, and lowers staff burnout.
And that really brings us to the final takeaway here. The biggest hurdle for AI in healthcare isn't a technology problem, it's a translation problem. It's about translating the very real, everyday needs of a hospital into challenges that innovators are excited and, frankly, incentivized to solve. Which leaves us with a critical question to think about. How do we make sure that we're not just building smarter tools, but that we're finally solving the right problems?